I bet you've got a plant or two that have just stopped growing. Maybe you've not seen a new leaf on your monstera for months, or your philodendron has ceased to play ball and you've been pulling your hair out trying to figure out why. Well, don't worry, my plant friend, it happens to the best of us. We've all been there, believe me. My current hairline isn't because of my 2 kids, no. It's because of the 200 plant children I'm trying to keep alive. It's quite often a challenge. Now, figuring out why this is happening can be tricky, but rather helpfully, if I do say so myself, I've got a nifty little checklist that I go through every single time this happens to me that I'll share in this very video. We'll cover it all so that you can finally put this conundrum to bed once and for all and kickstart your plant's growth. It's helped me out of a jam plenty of times. This lopsided creature hiding in the corner of my dining room is Ruby, my somewhat temperamental rubber tree. I've had her for a fair few years now. It might even be decades at this point actually. Gosh, I'm getting old. I think she was one of the first plants that me and Mrs. Sheffield bought together all those many moons ago. Well, for the first couple of years of getting to know her, she confused the bejesus out of me. She would look spectacular during the summer with new leaves coming out every couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden she would just stop and be stuck in a kind of stasis. No new leaves for months. I was panicking the first year this happened, screaming at her, "I give you everything you want and this is how you repay me!" Until finally, many months down the road, a new leaf started to show its face. Phew! The panic subsided and our relationship got back on track. But I was left thinking, why on earth did this happen? Everything was perfectly set up for her to spread her wings, but she just didn't want to. And then it dawned on me, it was winter. But surely it's warm enough inside our homes for plants to grow all year long, right? They're not getting blasted with snow and frost like their outdoor cousins, so should be plenty happy with their lot in life. Well, the thing is, light is the thing that our green friends are missing out on in winter, and some plants suffer a more severe case of seasonal affective disorder than others, and the rubber plant is the biggest sufferer. You see, winter is a tough time for our tropical plants. If your days get shorter and the nights longer like mine, it's absolutely normal for a few of them to down tools until spring. Unpleasant, but normal. Monstera is another one that gets miserable over the winter months. Moni the monster in my bedroom pretty much stops sending out new growth until spring every year, and now I just leave her alone reluctantly to let her do her hibernation thing. I've learned to live with this annoying habit and suffer through winter looking at all my moody plants hoping they'll recover when spring rolls around. Most of the time, they do. Most of the time. So light really is the biggest contributor to plant growth. It's the food that feeds that growth. But what if it's spring or summer and you're still not seeing any action? Plant action. Then the first check will be to see how much light she's getting. Have you moved her recently? Is she now getting less light than before? Is there something new blocking her view of the sky, both inside and outside? Is it a particularly miserable summer? Simply moving your gal nearer to the window where it can see a decent amount of the sky could be enough of a kick up the bum to get her going. My living room faces west, so when the sun does show itself, it can get quite bright. During early spring, the plants that sit on that windowsill are absolutely full of beans, living life to the max. A couple of months later though, and that jubilant growth seems to subside. Do you know what is making a difference? That damn hedge that sits outside the window. When that hedge gets bushy and I put off giving it a trim for far too long, my indoor plants suffer the consequences, and that's when the down tools happens. You see, their view of the grey sky is getting blocked off by all the new hair the hedge has grown over spring. It's the little differences that can make a big impact, but just taking note of how much sky your plants can see is a good gauge for how happy they will be. So your little green mister is getting a decent view of the sky, but it's still misbehaving. What do we check next? Well, the engine room is a good place to start. The roots are the foundation to any decent plant. Without a decent foundation, the whole thing will soon come crumbling down. Pull his trousers down and give everything a good look over and even a gentle fondle. If you do pull his trousers down and the whole thing is sopping wet, then this is where your problems lie. Overwatering. Plants just won't be happy sat in a puddle of water all the time, and growth is usually the first thing to go by the wayside. Wet soil lacks oxygen and roots suffocate. Turns out roots need oxygen just as much as you and me. You need to have a good look to see if anything is black and mushy. This is a sign of the dreaded root rot. If that's the case, then all is not lost. You've been naughty, but the relationship can still be fixed. Repot the plant into some nice fresh soil, cutting anything black and mushy out, and then only water when the soil is dry from then on. And to do that checking the soil thing, use Mr. Sheffield's #1 affiliate item, the good old moisture meter, and water when the probe reads dry. Simples. It's listed in my Amazon store, link below if you haven't got one. Things should start to massively improve, provided you caught the problem in time. If you're not heavy-handed with the watering can and the root ball isn't sopping wet when you get it out, then it's time to check out how root-bound he is. If the whole thing is basically one big root, then it's time for a repot, my plant friend. Now you can expect to see some roots, it's a plant after all, but there should be some soil for the roots to grow into. If there isn't, then he won't be sending out many new shoots. Monsteras always tend to look somewhat root bound because the roots are chunky monkeys, so you only really need to repot them when it's massively pot bound. In all honesty, even if your green guy isn't particularly root bound, a repot into some fresh soil might be just the thing that kicks him on. If it's been a couple of years since you did this, then a refresh can be just the ticket. Things can get pretty dense and compact down there after a couple of years, so a new light fluffy mix could be just what the doctor ordered. I use plant-specific mixes from Cybotanica, which are perfect, and you can get yourself a 10% discount using my link in the description. I've noticed a big difference in my plants since switching to them last year because their mixes are always nice and chunky, and plants love that. If everything doesn't look too shabby, and you can't be bothered to go through all the repotting malarkey, then a fairly decent stopgap that can work a treat is to give the soil a poke to aerate it a bit. Like I say, the problem with old soil is that it gets too dense for the roots over time, so breaking it up a bit with a chopstick or something can really help. And don't worry too much about damage to the roots. They're much more resilient than we give them credit for, and will survive the odd poke here or there. They can even handle being chopped in half. Yeah, I've done this lots of times and they love me for it. Check out the video in the top right corner all about that. It's a real game changer. Right, the light is good and so is the soil and roots, but the mystery still goes on with your fussy little mister. Where next? Nutrients is always a good bet. If you're not giving Popeye spinach, then he won't be saving the day. Plants need nutrients to sustain their growth. Light is the main driver for good growth, but nutrients is like the fuel you add to the fire. And it's quite often the thing that we forget about, right? I mean, it's a pain in the bum mixing up a concoction for our entire collection when we've got kids or animals pestering us for food. It can wait until next week, right? Problem is, next week quite often turns into next month, and then next year, and before you know it, you've got a mess on your hands. Am I right or am I right? Oh, just me? Anyway, just give them a feed according to the instructions on the packet. I use Houseplant Focus by Growth Technology, but you can use anything you want as long as it's suitable for houseplants. Even Miracle Grow will do a job. I used it for years and I didn't get too many complaints. So the light is good, the roots and soil is spot on, and you're feeding every couple of weeks like the doting plant parent you are, but still nothing is happening. Now the things I've mentioned are the most common issues that will solve 95% of problems. But if that's not the case, then we need to check for things that are more on the sinister side. Yes, pest and disease. A plant ransacked with annoying twats like spider mites, thrips and mealybugs really won't be a happy bunny and will most likely shut down to protect itself. So it's well worth giving everything a good check over then. Get a spotlight on the leaves and check for things like tiny specks, fine webbing, mottling of the leaves and white blobs in the crevices. These are all signs of unwelcome visitors making hay on your poor plant, and he's in dire need of your help. It's time to get the potions and spells out and declare war on these tiny beasts. Luckily for you, I've got a video on just how to spot and deal with these annoying buggers that I'll leave a link to in the top right corner, so check it out after this. Black stems and weird spots and colours on the leaves can be a crafty disease showing itself. It is normally caused by poor air circulation, overcrowding, misting, or even pruning with dirty pruners. Your best bet here is to prune away anything that looks suspicious and treat with a decent fungicide. Hopefully he'll fight off the disease like the little trooper he is and bounce back ready to fight for another day. Right, check out Francis, my dear little Fiddle Leaf Fig here. Not long ago, this guy was a single slow-growing stem. He basked in the sun all day and still not much was happening. Well, I wanted a better life for him, so what did I do? I cut him in half. And now look at him. He's got 4 brand new stems to show for himself, and in no time he's going to be the biggest, bushiest fiddle leaf fig in the entire schoolyard. What my experiment on Francis has hopefully shown you is that pruning a plant can put a rocket under its bum to start growing again. Any plant will have dormant nodes just ready and waiting to be activated, and pruning is exactly the signal they are waiting for to kick them into action. I do it all the time and my plants love me for it. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but cutting off sections of your plant can actually get it out of a state of hibernation. And the beauty of doing this is that you get to propagate the cuttings and raise the offspring. And if your mother plant is still acting up, then you can focus all your love and attention on the babies and discard the mother like an unwanted child. No, Mr. Sheffield, just stop chucking plants out. Just give them to your in-laws when you don't want them. Anyway, you should check out Francis's wild journey by clicking on the link on the screen now. It shows you everything you need to know to Henry VIII your plant with success. And subscribe to the channel for more fun, and I'll see you next time.